Good morning, I'm Tony Momberger from the Redlands Daily Facts doing another Quasquicentennial video interview this morning. I'm in City Council chambers with Lorrie Poyzer, very long time city clerk for Redlands and just retired in December.
3.5 years ago.
It wasn't
So it was
2009. You have a lot of stories. I know that you came in with some numbers. I'm dying to hear them. Tell me your numbers.
Well, I served as city clerk. I served under the regimes of 29 council members, 11 different mayors. I processed 29 ballot measures and was the elections official for 20 elections throughout my career.
Wow.
And
okay. How many?
It seems like once I took office, we had nothing but ballot measures to work with. My predecessor didn't have a single initiative.
You're kidding.
Whereas I had lots of them.
How long was she in the seat?
She was there for about 12 years. So
Wow.
it became a very popular thing to do throughout the state.
Okay, so
Just
it was
changed the law
things
by-
were changing.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Okay, I have so many questions, I hardly know where to start. First of all, let's tell people, how many years were you city clerk?
I was in the office for almost 34 years.
Okay, and what year did you start?
In 1976.
Okay, tell me how you started doing that.
Well, I was working at Bank of America at that time as the loan secretary, real estate loan secretary in fact. And Peggy Mosley, who was then city clerk, was looking at a retirement of her future, or of her deputy at that time, and was looking for a future replacement. Took me out to lunch, offered the job to me, and after I considered it for a while, decided, why not?
And this is an
Step
elected
into-
position,
This is an elected.
but she just offered it to you.
Well, at that point, I was just gonna be the deputy.
Okay.
So number three, actually, there was a full-time deputy there ahead of me. When we first started, there were 3 employees in the office plus the city clerk.
Wow.
When I left, I had part-time employees only,
Mhm.
one of them. Anyway, she offered the job to me and I accepted, thinking that my father had been city treasurer for many years and he was then retired, that I'd continue keeping a Poyzer in City Hall.
Nice.
And when she did retire, well, first it was the deputy who retired, and I took over as deputy city clerk. It was
Mhm.
a promotion. And then when Peggy Mosley retired, the city council actually appointed me to the position. And I served until, I think it was about a 2-year appointment time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to run for election.
had to run.
And I ran for 7 different terms. 5 of them were unopposed. I think toward the end, I had someone running who just needed a job and didn't realize what she might be running for.
Uh-huh.
And after I was reelected that 7th term, I wondered why I had run again.
Oh.
That's when things started going really downhill around here as far as cutting of staff, layoffs. It got really bad in my office. That last year was tough.
Okay.
I only had 1 part-time employee, and I had complaints about how often the office was closed, but I couldn't work 10-hour days and also go to council meetings
Sure.
and keep an office open with no employees.
Before we go on, tell me your father's name.
Marion H. Poyzer.
And he was treasurer?
And he was treasurer for about 20 years.
Wow.
So,
Okay, so you're a native of Redlands?
yes,
All
I'm
right.
kind of a 3rd-generation Redlander. My step-grandfather was the first twin recorded birth in the city of Redlands.
Really?
The birth books in the clerk's office had his birth record with his twin sister.
Oh, that's cool. And their
So-
names were?
It was Bill Korn and Louise Korn, Korn.
Uh-huh. Okay,
So-
so you've got this job now, and what exactly is the city clerk's job?
In real simple terms, secretary to the city council.
Okay.
The city council as a body, not as the individuals. And I was the keeper of the records of all the minutes, all the actions that were taken throughout the years, all of the ordinances and the resolutions that were approved by city council. Conducted the elections. Campaign statements and conflict of interest statements were filed in my office. And if they weren't, I had to chase after the people and make sure they did file them legally.
And it's been said, in fact, it's been said this morning, that Lorrie Poyzer knows where the bodies are buried.
Someone said that to me this weekend, and I thought, no, I don't know where the bodies are buried. If I do, I'm not talking about them.
Okay. But you have good stories.
I guess.
Okay, 1976, you started
Right.
the bicentennial year for Redlands. And the rest of the country.
No, that was in 1988, right, for the rest of the country. It was very active during our centennial celebration in Redlands.
Mhm.
That was the beginning of the City Clerk's Boutique, where I was selling all kinds of memorabilia from the centennial celebration. It was over $100,000 went through my office that year.
Wow.
And it was just strictly, if it was a nonprofit organization that was selling something of interest that had the city logo on it,
Mm-hmm.
I would help sell it in my office. Because they were only available on weekends and at the special events.
Sure.
So I added some hours to their sales. And it was strictly, you give me the item, I sell it, I'll give you the money back. No overhead, no, what's the word I want to use? I didn't make a profit.
You didn't
It was
skim any
just-
off the top.
No,
Okay.
nothing for the city.
Uh-huh.
The general fund got nothing out of that.
Okay, you're just a
So,
venue to,
And I'm kind of amazed this year that it's not being done for the 125th the same way.
okay.
There doesn't seem to be as many memorabilia items out there. We found during the centennial that if you put Redlands on something,
People-
it's sold,
Yes.
period.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, you had a lot of ballot initiatives you said that you
Yes.
processed. What do you think of as some of the more contentious issues that divided this town?
Proposition R, the growth initiative, that was the first one.
When
And
was
then, of
that?
course, I don't recall the year, I'm sorry.
Okay, what was that about?
That was the Friends of Redlands put on an initiative to limit growth in Redlands. They didn't like the way we were growing. And it's what stifled Redlands, I think.
Okay,
I mean, look at what we don't have to shop in Redlands at this time.
okay,
But as an impartial elected official, I just took care of it.
uh-huh,
I think the one that really bothered me the most was the district election initiative. Tony Martinez was a very active North Side Mexican activist.
okay,
He insisted we needed to have districts by election. And his first initiative came through with over 7,000 signatures, if I recall. But they neglected to include a map designating the boundaries for those districts.
oh,
So his initiative was rejected by the city clerk.
let me back up just
So-
a second. Did Measure R pass?
Measure R did pass, yes.
Measure, okay,
And lots of different amendments to it passed. There was a contingency in this town that did not want growth of any
Okay.
kind.
okay, now
Both
moving
houses
back,
as well as commercial.
back to Tony Martinez's boundaries.
So anyhow, he still wanted districts desperately.
Uh-huh,
He went out and circulated yet another petition, this time with a map. But they forgot to change how many people would be elected at the next election in their initiative. And we suddenly found ourselves with another initiative, lots of signatures, and 6 council members being elected,
oh,
which we could not do.
right, because it's an even
So
number.
once again, the city clerk had to reject his
Uh-huh.
petition. But I will admit, that's one of the first times I worked a little bit behind the scenes, talking to council members. You know, 7,000, 8,000 people, some of them duplicates, they've signed 2 initiatives. They want districts in this town. We need to do something for them. At least put it on the ballot as perhaps just a question of, do you want districts?
Mhm.
And then perhaps set them up later. Well, council did decide to go ahead, they corrected the second initiative. So we would only have 5 council members on the board.
Do you remember who was on
And,
council at the time?
No, I don't, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
So anyhow, it did get back on the ballot, so, well, it was on the ballot, and we did have districts for one election. Then we had a census, and we had to revise the boundaries. And that's the night Lori got upset for the first time in a council meeting and verbally said something. I suddenly found myself one of the disenfranchised voters. 2 elections for city councils I did not get to vote in
Oh,
because they kept changing the boundary right around my house. And that's the night I refused to read the title of the ordinance. I handed it to my deputy, who lived in Ukipa, and I said, perhaps she'll read it for you. It was probably 1 o'clock in the morning when this was going on. We were tired, all of us.
uh-huh,
And that was the first time I said something in a meeting and said, I'm not gonna do that.
wow,
One of my favorite council members and mayors, Swen Larson. I never got to vote for him. Never.
Wow. What's the latest a council meeting
So,
has run?
A little after 2, I think it was close to 2:30 a.m.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was the interesting thing. At that time, we were open from 8 to 5. I had to be back at work at 8 the next morning because the people that didn't stay up wanted to know what we did. So I was there.
Wow.
Before me and most of my career,
Who was that?
it was Bill Schindler,
Okay.
and he was another local boy.
Sure.
But I love the way Bill sometimes approached the planning in the town, and it was just a planning director. It wasn't the community development director, all these fancy new titles that we're coming up with. Somebody wanted to put up a big flag. I believe it was, at that time, it was Laban Runkle, which is now Tom Bell.
Okay.
They wanted to put a big flag up. And everybody was saying, oh, they can't do that. That's signage. And Bill Schindler said, it's the American flag, it will fly there. And if you've noticed, they have a big American flag still flying there.
Oh, really?
It's not quite as big as the one on our Liberty Pole, but it's big.
And our Liberty
So-
Pole is the one outside of.
Outside here.
the-
yeah.
Okay, so when you started, you were at the, what we
The
call
old
the
City
the
Hall,
old
yes.
City Hall. And,
The real City Hall.
yeah, right, because I will not stop calling this the Wells Fargo building. That, when did they move in here? When did you?
It's
relocate?
been probably 15 years ago.
Okay.
I was one of the last offices to come over. It was an interesting move. We moved in July, right after the 4th of July celebration. And I was extremely busy that last few days selling 4th of July tickets and T-shirts. I didn't have time to pack.
Yeah.
And we moved the day after the 4th across the street. And they had postponed that move so many times. My deputy was going to be on vacation right after the 4th. I said, go. They're not going to move us. They moved us. I spent a week down here in T-shirts and jeans.
Oh, boy.
It took us all day just to move the vault materials, the records that were in the vault. So
What's in there? Have you gone through?
it's the records of all the actions of the city council. We still have the birth and death certificates dating back to 1888. And ordinances, resolutions, agreements, contracts, trash, goodies. It's full.
Okay.
It's full. I understand our new city clerk is putting things on the computer. That worries me a little bit.
That's a
but
big job.
It's a big job. I know that space was getting rather tight in there, but I hate losing handwritten records.
Will it be just, there's a computer version and then you still have
I
the
have
vault?
no idea what
Or
they're doing.
hard to
I have
imagine
no idea what he's doing.
destroying the old.
I hope not.
We-
One of the first things that happened to me when I was first appointed city clerk, I just thought of this, was the state wanted to take our birth certificates away from us. Because very few cities had them yet. I wanted to keep them in our vault or historical records, as well as we were still providing certified copies. And we had to go to battle with attorneys and everything. And I was just a brand new city clerk. I thought when they appointed me city clerk, I knew what I was doing. I found out I didn't. A lot of nights studying law books. And then this came along,
So are
and
they,
Peggy Mosley was still alive at that time. She called me up and says, they did it to me too, Lori, just as soon as I took office. Keep them if you can. And we did.
you did?
We did.
Okay, so I could come and get my birth
So,
certificate here?
Not anymore. We can't do certified copies anymore.
Okay,
The cost was prohibitive to get the proper paper for them.
but it exists in
Because
this.
of the, mostly the Homeland Security situation.
Okay, but they are
Put
here?
us out of business. As far as I know, they're still back there.
Okay. What is the process? I know we're jumping all over the place here,
That's
but
fine.
what is the process when you talked about Tony Martinez wanting to effect change in the city government?
Mhm.
How does that happen? You start with a petition and then what happens?
Gather as many signatures as you can. Let's see if I can remember thinking back. I believe it's 10% for a general municipal election and 15% of the registered voters for a special election.
Of the population, of the
registered
70,000
Of
people
the
here?
registered voters.
Of the registered voters, okay.
And you collect those signatures, and then the clerk will verify and confirm signatures. We finally, after a while, had to go to the random selection. I didn't like doing it, but it became cost prohibitive to check all 7,000 signatures.
You were going through each signature.
It's a manual thing you do over at the Registrar of Voters office in San Bernardino.
When you say
So-
check, you just mean see if they're actually registered to vote, or are you comparing the
You
signature
are also
with the
comparing the
driver
signature.
license and the address?
Well, with the signature that's on the voter registration form,
Wow.
which I
That's a-
found not too difficult to do because I, quote, paid checks at the Bank of America, which was verifying the signatures. And as long as you paid the same checks over and over and over for the same account, you learned whose signatures, you didn't have to compare, you just knew, that's John Smith's signature.
So
But with the,
then you started going
have-
randomly picking some to check? And
that, was done by computer. Each signature was given a number, and then the computer would randomly pick 500, and those signatures were checked, and then there was a formula that you followed to decide whether or not the petition qualified.
When you went through
So-
one, how often did you come across a signature that, were-
Not too often.
Okay.
We didn't run into it. One of the things in Redlands that I always felt when I was in office, we didn't have any crooks. Nobody was looking out for themselves, they were looking out for the city. You didn't see fraud. One time I did on a nomination papers and I lost that in court, so.
Now, are you talking about the general citizenship of Redlands? You're talking about the city council? You're talking about city staff?
All of
Everything?
above. Maybe we better not say the citizens, because we did have some problems with citizens, but it's always a bad apple in the barrel.
Okay.
So,
People fill out a petition and they submit it to you and you verify the names, and what happens from there?
take it to city council, and then they have a choice to either just put it on a ballot, or they can adopt the ordinance as presented by those signatures. Never had that happen. Never saw that happen. It always went on a ballot.
Okay.
And of course, costs kept going up and up on elections.
What are we talking about
So-
to have a special election?
I believe the last election I conducted was $175,000.
And that's paid for
And I
out of,
had by the general fund, the taxpayers of the city. One of the first things I did when I took over as city clerk was change the election date. We had been using April for, I believe it was the even numbered years, but we changed it to November, the odd years, to save money. We consolidated our elections with the school board and water districts. And that worked fine up until late 2000s, when the school board decided to go with the general municipal election for the president. And all of a sudden, our costs shot up because we were all by ourselves again.
oh,
And so that was one of my last functions, that I had to process the paperwork to change the election date to November of the even numbered years.
uh-huh.
They thought we would get more turnout, but I don't think people go to the end of the ballot for local issues. They vote for the president and then they quit.
Now, did you also process ballots for local elections?
Yes, I was the elections official for the city of Redlands. To have like 25, 26% voter turnouts, that's ridiculous.
And that's 25% of registered voters?
Of registered voters, and not every person in town is a registered voter.
Okay, so what was the hottest election?
The hottest.
What was the biggest race?
I would say, and I can't tell you what year it was, but Bill Cunningham was running for re-election. Bill McCallum, Tim Maroney were on the ballot. Two gentlemen who love Redlands had no access to crime, and Bill Cunningham slaughtered them. And, it was just the mud he slung at them during the election was awful. If you ever talk to Bill McCallum, he'll never, ever run for office again.
We did a video interview with Bill.
He's, well, he's Mr. 4th of July. But that was the one, that was one of the hottest, I guess.
That was it.
I tried to stay impartial, and I will admit sometimes it was difficult, but, and the worst thing is the two elections I had competition was conducting the election in the office and the campaign outside of the office. That was,
So
sometimes that was kind of hard.
you're running
Yes. Against someone,
and you're conducting the
yes,
election, you're processing the thing.
yes.
Is there any,
A conflict?
yeah, seems like there would be, but I don't know enough about it
Apparently not,
to-
because every city hall in Redlands, state of California does that.
I'm not
There's that
accusing you
many-
of anything.
There's not that many elected clerks left.
Is there
But-
opportunity among the things that you were in charge of to exploit?
Perhaps, but I'm sorry, I'm too lazy to do that.
No, I'm not trying to
I-
make you defensive. I'm
Well,
just,
no, I'm trying to think, how
This
could
is a
I? And I really,
revelation.
I don't think that way at all. So I don't
okay.
know if I.
So it might be that there just isn't room really to,
Probably
use
not,
that
there's
to
too
your
many checks and double checks, too many other people involved. I mean, signatures are verified over it. In the original elections, we actually sent somebody from our office over, but then when I didn't have the staffing, I had to have that done too, and the
Mhm.
registrar's office did it. And they would call us and tell us that signatures were okay. I suppose, but like I say, I'm too lazy to be dishonest, I'm sorry. I don't wanna have to
That's
remember
fine.
the lie I told yesterday, let alone last week.
now, you know, I want to hear about drama and scandal. What have you seen? You don't have to tell me where the bodies are buried, but what kind of, have you been here at a council meeting where people were all head up and the city council, where there was high emotion and,
Frequently, yes, I learned to try to keep my face poker-faced and just listen. That wasn't my job to make a decision.
what happened? Tell me what your memories are. What stories do you share?
I have a feeling that I've kind of erased that. Is it called deleting? On
Really?
the computer. I don't worry about. I don't like conflict. I'm sorry.
I
Life
don't-
should be nice and smooth and easy.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
So,
What city council was the most popular? Were there some heroes that we've had come through our government?
I put Swen Larson at the top of the list.
Yeah.
Swen was a gentleman all the way around.
Uh-huh.
We had changes when Casey Hawes and Susan Pepler were elected.
Mhm.
Mr. Cunningham lost his position on council,
Okay.
which he had held for quite a few years.
How long was Bill the mayor?
We'd have to look that up.
Okay.
I don't recall those things.
Okay.
I'm not good with numbers,
That's
that's why I'm
all
not
right.
city treasurer. That's what I always said. I do remember one thing that was interesting with Tony Martinez.
Uh-huh.
Nothing was personal in my office as far as I was concerned. Yes, I did have to reject 2 of his petitions,
Mhm.
but I sent him a Christmas card one year, and he came in demanding to know why I sent him a Christmas card.
Really?
He was mad. I said, because I wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas, Tony. Oh. And from then on, we were kind of friends.
Oh, really?
He finally realized that it wasn't personal that I was picking on him.
Uh-huh. It
It
just
just-
wasn't the right procedure.
I followed the law.
And what became of the districting?
Well, we had 2 elections with districts that I didn't get to vote in.
Uh-huh.
And then another group came up with another petition to do away with them. And we're back to at-large elections again.
Okay.
So, and I really think Redlands isn't big enough yet to have districts. We weren't big enough then, and we're not big enough now, because you get one candidate from the north side
Uh-huh.
is not gonna carry a vote. You need at least 3 votes to pass something on a council, sometimes 4.
Mhm.
So districts to me just didn't work.
Is the
And
north
I-
side fairly represented? Is this a problem that needs to be solved?
I think so, in a way, but it's their problem on the north side. If they wanna have representation, they need to run for city council.
Have there been in your career candidates from the north side that have?
Gilberto Gil, Odie Martinez. I'm not sure.
Not a lot.
Not a lot,
Okay.
not a lot.
All right. What am I forgetting to ask you? What do you see for Redlands?
I hope the economy picks up. I really do. It's sad what's happened to City Hall and the city governments, not just Redlands.
Mm-hmm.
We're not providing the service we used to.
In what ways?
Well, we're finally fixing some of our streets in town.
We are.
But look at our streets, look at our trees that are not being trimmed.
Mm-hmm.
Our parks are not the gems that they used to be. it's sad, and yet I know why. I understand the whys.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is our labor contracts. They are a bit of a problem. I didn't have a labor contract
Oh,
as an elected official, but I was
Oh, that's
fortunate
right,
that at that time, the city treasurer usually did the negotiating, and I'd come along with the, me too, please.
whatever you said.
But, gosh, I can't recall now what year it was. They did do a survey for the employees, and that's when there was a number of people that got some very substantial salary raises. And I was one of them. I got a 33% raise one year.
Oh, my God.
Finally got up to what other city clerks in this area were making.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it was my fault that I hadn't asked earlier for more money. I just had a job to do and I did it. So
And now you're retired.
now I'm retired happily.
You didn't want to go
Very
back to the
much.
bank?
No. I've even kind of given up on a lot of my volunteer work. Part of it is my health took a little bit of a downturn this past year. And I just don't have to get up and go to do the volunteer work I used to. I've had to resign from my Sir Optimus Club. And it's kind of sad in a way, but I've also reconnected with friends outside of City Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And my family has a mountain cabin in Angeles Oaks, which we used to call Camp Angeles. The famous Angeles Oaks now, you know, where all that excitement the last
Yes,
couple of
I
weeks
do.
have happened. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so I don't like all that publicity.
Well,
But-
and for people watching this in the future, there was a manhunt.
We had a big major
For
manhunt with a
Christopher
shootout
Dorner.
with Christopher Dorner up just above us, and then
And it
you
ended
see,
in
the
our
week
local
before that,
mountains.
we had a bus crash that killed a number of people. And then the week after that, we had another shootout in Ukipa that ended in Angeles Oaks area with a
Yeah.
dead man.
Yeah, we've had an
I don't-
exciting month.
Three's enough. Three's fine, that's enough. Leave us alone. But I have been able to spend a lot of time up at the mountain cabin. And my dog and cat and I all enjoy going up there and
Mhm.
breathing the fresh air. And
But now, you're gonna look back at your career, Redlands City Hall. You were Redlands City government. That's, are you pleased? This is.
I was pleased with what I did, yes.
Yeah.
I can live with myself very easily. I did a good job as far as I'm concerned. And I guess the voters thought I was doing a good job
I
too.
guess they
kept
did.
re-electing me.
Yeah,
And
all